So this will be the second video I'm going to do on calendars and time. I have a book that has been sitting in my stack of books to read for at least 15 years. And here is that book. I'm going to show you a close-up of it here in a minute. It's called Calendars. It's really a book. It's a history of calendars. You know, I have had an interest in just reading this book and a history of calendars even before I started engaging Seventh-day Adventists. But because of my engagements with Seventh-day Adventists, this book got moved up my reading list. And in late 2024, I had a business trip that I had to make. And that meant for me 4 to 5 hours sitting on an airplane or sitting between airports. And, you know, in other words, I had 4 or 5, maybe even 6 hours of just travel time. And actually, I love it because I just put on my headphones, I tune everything out, and I get a chance to read my books. And I dedicated myself to reading, and then even after I read it, to continue to study this book. And I read this book on that trip, and wow, rather enlightening, and it's resulting in some videos here which are going to make Adventists very uncomfortable. So anyway, I read that book, which you can see here now on screen, should you want to get it. It's a fascinating read. And if you read it, I think you're going to have the same conclusions that I have, which is, I have no idea what day it is. I really have no idea what time it is. I don't even know how long a year is. That's my grand takeaway from this book. And not that that bothers me. But as I was reading the book, I was constantly reminded of a song of my youth, right here from the band Chicago, and it says, "Does anybody really know what time it is?" And the answer is no. We really don't know what time it is. We have no idea how long a day is, how long what time is, what time is it, and how long a year lasts. You know what I did learn? Time is a fluid concept. This book will bend your mind. Let me just give you one example. We got to the point in history where we could make atomic clocks, where we could really track time down to many different decimal places. So we had 2 exact in sync atomic clocks, and they showed this experiment in this book. So they said to 2 people, put the atomic clocks in your pocket. You're going to fly around the world this way, and you're going to fly around the world that way. You're going to fly around the world the direction the earth is turning. You're going to fly around the world the direction against the earth's turning, but you guys will meet at the center point. And they met at the center point, and they looked at their clocks, and they were different. Time is fluid. I don't know what time it is. Not that it really matters to me in one sense, but you know, if you're a legalistic Seventh-day Adventist, this matters a whole bunch. Especially if you're a Seventh-day Adventist and you believe in the unbroken 7-day cycle from Genesis 2:2. Well, the previous video that you see here has already disproven that the cycle is unbroken. No, the cycle is broken. Remember from that video, the Pharisees had to declare a new moon, and they had to go see it. So if Shlomo was sleeping in his tent, snoring like a camel, didn't wake up, didn't go outside and declare a new moon, because you know you can't do it on the testimony of one witness, they had to have more than one. Then if they don't have but one witness, and they said, "Oh well, we're going to add a day to the previous month, and we'll declare the new moon tomorrow." They added a day to the calendar. They just changed the 7-day cycle. Or how about this? Remember you looked at the Mishnah in section 3.1 on Rosh Hashanah, and what it said about if the Day of Atonement fell on a Friday or a Sunday, then the Jews were looking ahead in their calendars and said, "Oh no, we can't have that." So then they go and they add days or subtract days in previous months to make sure the Day of Atonement does not fall on a Friday or a Sunday. And that's the calendar of the Pharisees. That's the calendar of our Bible. That's the calendar we see in the New Testament. That is the Sabbath day Jesus observed. The Pharisees' calendar, which is a changing calendar. Now, this book had a lot to say about 1582. Do you know about 1582? Well, you're going to learn about 1582 here. That is often called, that's the year that lost 11 days. Look with me here. October 4th, you can look at the calendar. Thursday, October 4th, became Friday, October 15th. Really, this is the day that changed the world. Now, Adventists also have a lot to say about this 1582 calendar, but before I go to the Adventist, let me give you a short history which comes from this book, which, again, I can recommend this book to you. It's a fascinating read about calendars and time and all the politics and intrigue surrounding calendars. It's amazing. Let me give you a short history of events leading up to this 1582 calendar. First, it starts with Julius Caesar. We are really on our calendar that we're using today here, at least in America, and for most of the Western world, is based on the calendar of Julius Caesar. Of course, changed by Pope Gregory, called the Gregorian calendar, but it's really Julius Caesar's calendar. Adjusted is all it is. So Julius Caesar, he reordered the calendar in 46 BC. Right there. He set the baseline for us. Now, then 3 years later, he added 2 months to the calendar. Between November and December, he inserted 2 months, and one was 33 days, and one was 34 days, and the whole year was 445 days, and the world was confused. It was called the Year of Confusion. You think he kept a 7-day cycle? How do you add 33 days and add 34 days and turn a year into 445 days and keep a 7-day unbroken cycle? You don't. But I won't belabor that point here because I got better examples for you coming up. So at Caesar's death, for whatever reason, the brainiacs decided to change the leap year and the adjustment of the calendar from 4 years to 3 years. Well, then they realized that's not working out so good because things are getting out of sync, so they corrected it in 8 BC. So the Julian calendar really became obsolete pretty quick because they weren't syncing the actual days to the lunar solar schedule that they knew. By 325, scholars already were looking at it, at the Julian calendar, and going, we're 3 days out of sync already. So here we are in 325 AD, knowing the Julius Caesar calendar is already out of sync. How is Adventist, I'm talking to you, how is a calendar, we know now historically, was at least 3 days out of sync, retain a 7-day cycle? Was the Sabbath that they were observing in the year 300 the right Sabbath or the wrong Sabbath? Because we already knew the calendar was out of sync 3 days. So maybe they weren't observing a Sabbath. Maybe they were observing a Wednesday they thought was the Sabbath. Again, it's broken already, Adventist. By the year 1200, again, this is all the events leading up to 1582. By the year 1200, there was a scholar who wrote the winter solstice. We're already off 10 days. Wow, that's a lot of time. Also in the mid-12th century, there was a German scholar who recognized that the Julian calendar was losing a day every 315 years. So all these scholars are coming along going, we got to do some calendar adjustments here, and nobody's really interested in changing it. But everybody knows the calendar's out of sync. So was the Sabbath the Sabbath? No. Because everybody knows the calendar is wrong. 1267, very famous English scholar Francis Bacon, he said, our calendar is wreaking havoc amongst our businessmen and our farmers because it's so out of sync. 1291 to 1352, Pope Clement arrives on the scene. And he's kind of a science guy. And he too has been hearing all this calendar controversy. And he knows we need worldwide calendar reform. And he wants to get it done. But the bubonic plague comes. They got other things to worry about. Calendars, we don't need to worry about calendars. We've got people dying all over Europe, mid-1300s from the plague. So, of course, nothing happens. Plague is over. Early 1400s, there's a French cardinal who wrote on the problem of the Julian calendar. See, this problem just keeps coming up. There was another French scholar who proposed in the year 1439, he said, we need to cancel 7 days in our current calendar to get it back in sync. No one had the political willpower to do it. Changing a calendar was extraordinarily controversial, and nobody wanted to do it. So it didn't happen, even though they knew it. Now on the scene, Pope Gregory comes, and he's shown that the calendar needs to be reformed. And the main man behind the calendar reformation and getting the calendar in proper sync with the planets and getting it in sync with the seasons was a Jesuit, an evil Jesuit named Christopher Calavis. He was the main person behind the 1582 calendar change that you're going to see. Here is that evil Jesuit, Christopher Calavis, who actually corrected the calendar, who actually brought the right Sabbath into sync here, and it really is going to should be credited for it. Anyway, scholars are working on this, convincing Pope Gregory, you got to change this. He had 9 scholars demonstrate to him the problem of the current calendar. Now, the scholars in the 1580s, when this is going on, they already knew one thing. They knew the length of a year. We don't even know what it is. It's variable. By the way, we still don't know the length of a year today. Isn't that wild? We do not know how long a year is today. Because here's what happens. You'll learn this if you read this book. The Earth is on an axis, and it's a little tilted. And because of gravitational forces, if something happens and the Earth and it wobbles just a little bit, and it does, our time changes. That's why time is fluid. That's why nobody can say we know how long a year is. Now, they didn't know that in the 1580s. But what they did know was, we know we can't figure out the length of a year. We don't know why. Now we know why. So this Jesuit, Calavis, he also realized that the length of a year was variable. But he didn't want to say that to the Catholic Church because he knew that that would not be too well received. So he just kind of kept that to himself and kept quiet about that. Well, anyway, Pope Gregory issues a papal bull, October of 1582, and says this: Thursday, October 4th, will be followed by Friday, October 11th. Now, this papal change, remember that, 1582, this is the height of the Reformation. So all the Catholic nations, Italy, Spain, Portugal, changed their calendar pronto. The Protestant countries said, nah, we ain't listening to no Pope. We're not changing our calendar. So now you got a world running on 2, 3, or 4 different calendars. This actually, out of sync in terms of calendars, lasted for hundreds of years. So let me just give you just a quick synopsis of who changed their calendars and when. Because not everybody changed their calendars and at the same time. All throughout history that people were changing calendars. France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, they decided to change it 3 months later, and they went for December of 1582, and they said, okay, we'll accept your change. A year later, Bavaria and Austria said, okay, we'll change our calendars. They did it in October 1583. Switzerland did it in January of 1983. England waited till 1752 to bring their calendar in sync. You know the last person was that finally brought the whole world together on the same calendar? Greece. 1924. From 1582 to 1924 is what it took to get the world in sync. It took hundreds of years to get everybody on the Gregorian calendar. Now, this created calendar problems, as you can quite imagine here. They had to date. How do you date something? Well, this is what they did. Look at this newspaper from England in the 1750s, the London Gazette. What day is it? Well, it's Tuesday, October 1st if you're using the old style OS calendar, or it's Saturday, September 16th if you're using the new style calendar. Wow, so they had dates with OS and NS to signify that. So, hey Adventist, do you realize the Sabbath you are observing today on our very calendar we have now is from Pope, let me say it again, Pope Gregory, who was, the man behind it was a Jesuit, Christopher Calavis. That's the calendar, that's the Sabbath you are observing today as designed by a Pope and really actually designed by a Jesuit. Law given by a Pope. How about this? Do you realize that prior to 1582, You heard me say all of the scholars knowing the calendar was out of sync. Who was observing the right Sabbath at that time? In the 1300s, in the 1400s, in the 1100s? Nobody. Because the calendar was out of sync and nobody changed it. Nobody was observing the right Sabbath. Oh, there goes your 7-day cycle again. This means for hundreds of years, the wrong Sabbath was being observed around the world. Uh-oh, boom. The 7-day eternal cycle is broken again. Now, Adventists, in their literature, have a lot to say, as this book did here, about the 1582 calendar. And Adventists have a lot to say about the English 1752 calendar, which I'm not going to focus on here, though I will show you that. Let's look right here. Ministry Magazine, 1959 on page 39, and you can see they got the both 1582 and the 1752 English calendar, and look what it says about them. It says the calendar changed, yeah, but it did this, it did not disturb the days of the week. Look at the last grouping of red text. By a look at the calendar for these months, October 1582 and September 1752, it can easily be noted that the 7th-day week arrangement was not changed. The Bible Sabbath is still the 7th day. Here's what Adventists are saying. I've got dozens of quotes here where Adventists are talking about this 1582 calendar. Here's another one, 1938. So in October 1582, an adjustment was made. Thursday, October 4th, was followed by Friday, October 15th, in Spain, Portugal, and Italy. The day of the week was affected in this correction. So that's it. It's the date, not the day of the week, that was affected by this correction. And here's the Adventist reasoning. Look, Thursday, October 4th became Friday, October 11th. See, the weekly cycle remained intact. Thursday became Friday. Thursday, October 4th became Friday, October 11th. And Adventists have said this over and over and over in all these other magazines. It's essentially what they say. Look, Thursday the 4th became Friday the 11th. Now, Adventists, think about this for a minute. Read this one here from 1969. Any suggestion that the 7-day week be modified, adjusted, or abolished strikes deep concern to the hearts of Seventh-day Adventists, because we believe that God himself instituted the literal 7-day week at creation. Okay, it's time to strike a little fear into the heart of Seventh-day Adventists. We arrived at that point. When the calendar changed in 1582, did the weekly cycle change? Pay real close attention with me here. Look here. Here's that same calendar. Look at it. October 4th, Thursday became Friday, October 15th. Right? We agree. Thursday is October 4th. Friday should be October 5th. Saturday should be October 6th. And we just carry this all the way down till we hit October 15th, and what? October 15th should be Monday. But what is October 15th in this calendar? It's Friday. Guess what? There is no unbroken 7-day cycle in Genesis. Oh yeah, there is. Because October 15th should be a Monday, not a Friday, as this calendar shows us. Oops, again, the 7-day eternal cycle is broken once again. Not only has it already been proven in the previous video, preceding this one, how the Pharisees changed the calendar if on the new moon or the Day of Atonement, or they would add days and subtract days. We see that this 1582 calendar also now changed the 7-day cycle. And you know what? This is not hard to figure out. Any change to a calendar that is not done in increments of 7 will change the 7-day cycle. Right? If you add 2 days to the calendar, you're going to change the 7-day cycle. If you subtract 5 days from the calendar, you're going to change the 7-day cycle. Conversely, if the Pharisees were to add 7 days to the calendar, you wouldn't break the cycle. Or subtract 7 days, the cycle would be the same. Monday would still be Monday, and Sabbath would still be Sabbath. Any change to the calendar that's done that's not in increments of 7 will, by definition, change the weekly cycle. And that's exactly what happened in 1582. We changed 11 days. That's on an increment of 7. Of course the days are going to change. Friday, October 15th is not a Friday. If the cycle was to be right and to continue, it should be a Monday. So the 7-day cycle has been broken. Let's go back to that grand seer and prophet Ellen White. Look with me here. Signs of the Times, March 20th, 1879, page 90, where she says this: the weekly cycle of 7 literal days, 6 for labor and the 7th for rest, which has been preserved and brought down through Bible history, originating with the great facts of the first 7 days. Wrong, 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 Ellen White. And we just showed you in this video and the one before that, Ellen White, you are wrong. Ellen White taught wrong, as she always does. Adventists, you have taught wrong for over 100 years. And I have dozens of quotes about the 7-day cycle is unbroken from Genesis 2:2. No, it's broken. You see it broken here, and you see it broken in the previous video. So the Sabbath observed today, it's not the Sabbath of Genesis 2:2. Seventh-day Adventists, you're wrong. The evidence has been shown here and in the previous video. Seventh-day Adventism defeated once again.